Hello again. I'm here today to talk about the two seeds. Again, this kind of goes back to my first video talking about the people of God and who's not the people, which is referred to the church and all those aspects. If we look at Genesis and we see that he said that he would put enmity between thy seed and thou. Well, when he said thy seed, he means there's a seed or a group of church or people that are going to belong to him. And then he said thou. And then there's going to be a group of people or church or seed that's going to serve the enemy. This part in Genesis has been talked a lot throughout the entire Bible. If you read and study to see, even though the words aren't there for seed, or you may not see the word for church or people, it's there in different aspects. The light and the darkness, these are two different nations. Revelation exposes that the nation that is of light will be brighter than the sun in the future. And when darkness comes over his enemies in Revelation, they're going to be in darkness because they're blinded. That's all they see is darkness. So going back to Genesis, after he says, thy seed and thou, he then talks about the woman. Now, a lot of people believe that has to do with women and women giving birth and how painful childbirth is. It does, but a woman giving birth, and even the woman in general, is still a symbolic reference. We may be men, women are women, but again, we're nothing more than his temples, a vessel that he dwells in, that he works through. So is a man's body belong to a man? Does a woman's body belong to a woman? No, it does not. And we read further in that verse in Genesis where he says the woman is hearkened, or it belongs to the husband. Well, is he saying that every wife must listen solely to the husband like in the Middle East? No, he's not saying that. Because if you read Corinthians, Paul tells you that if the man is wrong, the woman corrects him. If the woman is wrong, the man corrects her. But the woman's place is to be the advisor, and the man's place is to lead his household. So they cannot work one without the other, the neck and the head. They are two parts of one body. If one fails, then the body will start to crumble. So we have to understand what he's really trying to say in Genesis. And it's a big, big verse that everyone goes over. So he talks about the woman giving birth and how it's going to be painful. Well, first of all, is it the woman, which is referred to as the wife, is also known in another word, the bride, the virgin? These two mean the same thing that he's talking about in Genesis. So he's saying that the woman, which then doesn't really reply to a singular woman, but man and women. Because both men and women, are we not, regardless of gender, children of the King of Israel? Are we not children of Christ? Are we not brothers and sisters to Christ? Is he not the father of all male and female? So again, if he's the temple and you choose that to say this is your body, I will surgically change it to another gender, or I will decorate it the way I want to, or pierce it the way I want to, aren't you just saying that this is my house? It belongs to me. I am the God of this house. I will decorate this house the way I see fit. How are you giving room for the Holy Spirit to work with you, to walk with you? Remember, we're to submit to Him, not the other way around, which is what a lot of people are actually doing. So, going back, the woman, and it says even in the New Testament, the new generation, when Christ comes, the beginning of the second coming, will be like a woman prevailing in birth. This is repeated as He said in Genesis. He just told you that in Genesis, as He says in the New Testament. So Christ is not an individual Son of God like we are. He is the image that is talked about in the 6th day in Genesis. He is the image that we are molded. He is the rock that we are built upon. He is the image we're created upon. So, with that understanding, what's the growing part in that verse in Genesis? The growing part is the suffering. It is part of the baptism. If Paul says we are to kill the flesh and crucify it and we die daily, then what is the resurrection? If we are supposed to die daily, what is it that revives us daily? That's the baptism. That's the born again. We die daily. We cannot be born every day out of our mother's womb. So therefore, if we cannot be born every day out of our mother's womb, then this is the born again, the baptism, also referred as, you could say, a rapture, because it is gathering you to Him. So, again, we're going to suffer in this world, and that's the part that he was saying. A woman's childbirth is going to be very, very painful, because they're giving birth to a child that's going to suffer in this world. And as we grow, we suffer. And like I said, it's extremely important that we understand what he was saying about the woman being bonded, following her husband, because he's really talking about us following him. He's the husband. He's the father. He's the male aspect. We are the females. We are the wives. You know, he talks about it in the relationship in many different ways, but mostly is really important because he talks about it a lot as a marriage. He says it himself, he calls everyone to the marriage. So this goes back to Genesis as it jumps through in the New Testament, as is talked about in Revelation. New Jerusalem, which is also another reference to the bride. The wives are beautiful or adorned for him and come and follow him. And then that's what he's talking about, the marriage, because the word is to be preached throughout all the world. So when he comes, there will be people that will recognize him, not as what he looks like, but will recognize him through his word. And those are the people that's the New Jerusalem. Those are the people that goes to him and are called to marry to him and to be with him for eternity. Again, going back to the seed now, not only does he say that there's hatred, there he makes a sword, the enmity, the sword. He says, I do not think I've come to bring peace, but a sword. Do not think I've come to bring salvation, but I've come to bring a sword. and I will divide the houses, because I will take he says in Revelation, I believe, he says he'll take a scythe, and he'll cut through, and those that are not part of his seed, he's going to cut with the sword. And then those that are his wheat, those are of his true fruits, will be gathered to him and will not be cut off. So there's so many meaning. There is so important to this part in Genesis that it needs to be studied again and truly understood with also his entire word, because if we really read the Bible, all God has been doing is repeating in different ways, but he's repeating the same teaching. He has never changed his teaching. Where it becomes distorted is where man goes unto their own understanding and becomes part of that other seed, that other nation that I'm going to get into in a little bit, because part of that other nation that is given over to a reprobated mind, a mind of sin, a mind of blindness. And those people rise up as the false Christ, the false prophets. You're not looking for one Antichrist. You're really looking at not just the Antichrists that are in the world, but the Antichrist spirit that's within you too. One sin is no greater than another unless you truly reject the Holy Spirit, and that is the greatest one. But that's for a whole nother aspect on the sin and how it affects us. But going back to the two nations that's talked about in Israel and Esau, there are two nations. One will be greater than the other. This is his people that he is referred to as the sands of the sea, as the ones that are beyond number. So if we go to Revelation, we say, there's 144,000. It's beyond number. How are you going to say you know the exact amount of his people when he has actually told you is going to be beyond number? He's going to gather his people from different tribes, but those tribes are scattered throughout the world still. And we will recognize the tribes when he comes and he reveals not the son, but the sons of sin. When he reveals the mirror to the whole world, they will see who the real tribes are. And if they do not reject him and his people, then they will become part of those tribes. Because otherwise, what's the point of having so many people multiply? And again, going back, what makes a person Israel is not by blood. Christ never had sex with anyone in the time of Genesis. So where does his blood come? His blood spiritually was given to Abraham, to his son Isaac, and to his grandson Israel, whom God named for all of his people. That name is the name of his church, is his seed. If we change the word Jacob back to the way God wanted us to read, to Israel in the Old Testament, we will recognize that this is the name of his church. Not Christian, not Catholic, not Protestant or Lutheran, but his name of his people is called Israel. That's why he's called the king of his people, the king of Israel. The ones he's come to call the lost sheep are the Israels that have become blinded. Those are the lost sheep. Because we're blinded by the other nation, the nation of not just Esau, But if you do the story of Esau, you find out that Esau mated with the Canaanites, which was constantly warned for him not to do. He also married into the Ishmael seed, which the Canaanites also married into. So this became a great nation. And this is what was talked about that was in the womb. So one is a great nation, but that nation in the end is not going to be mighty. It's going to fall, and it's going to fall. Their nation is going to be called Babylon. And that's not just in one country, that's all the countries that come together to try to control, try to have a form of peace in this world. And in God's eyes, this is not peace, people. How we are living right now is not peace, not according to God's view of it. We are sinning. If we were truly to be in His peace, we would be preaching His word all the time. We would be giving glory to Him. We wouldn't stop. We would be going out to highway and hedges. What does that mean? That means in our workplace, at home, everywhere. We would be showing the light to how people should live. That's the peace we should be bringing, but we're not. We've become drunken. We've drinking the same wine as the harlot. And there's another version of a woman or wife, but that's the wife that was cut off. That's the seed that was cut off. So he divorces that seed that he puts the enmity through, the sword. He divorces, he cuts that seed off because that seed will not join in to the Sabbath. And the Sabbath is not one day out of the week, but Sabbath should be the whole day. Is how you're supposed to live your life as a follower of Christ. If we break down the understanding of the Sabbath, the rituals, and understand its true meanings, then we will truly understand Sabbath is to not kindle His wrath, not to have fire on the candle. It's not to pick up dead wood. Dead wood was a reference to a dead tree that bears no fruit. You weren't supposed to mingle with the Gentiles, but to bring the Gentiles in to the church, to become Israel, to become part of the church, part of the body, part of that tree that bears the fruit. That's what we're supposed to do, but we are not. We're not supposed to cook on the Sabbath. If we cook is a method of working. So we're not supposed to do our own works, but we're supposed to always follow in the Lord's works. Follow in the works that He cooked for us, that He has fed us. The angel cake. But instead we cook our own works and we feed ourselves through our own understanding and what our view is of what we desire in our lives. So we have become part of that other nation, the nation of Esau, the nation of Babylon. And then it says, it says the elder shall serve the younger. So who's the elder? Who's the one that came first? Esau. Who's the younger? Israel. So it's saying that the Gentile nation, the nation of Babylon, will serve the nation of Israel, will serve God's people, will serve God in the end. So, again, if we're looking for an Antichrist to rule over a nation, we don't need to look any further than outside our own window, or even in our own household, or even in ourselves. That's where we should be looking for the Antichrist. Not be looking for a leader. You have Antichrist in every kingdom who represent kings and queens and presidents. You already have them here. So when he comes, as he did before, and he starts changing the whole world and starts preaching something that you think is new because you have forgotten, we have forgotten what what his teaching was, as the Pharisees did, we're going to say he's wrong and he's destroying our peace. He's destroying our way of life. We shouldn't be following him. We're waiting for the peace version of him to just take us out of this world. No, that's the fruit that Eve ate and Adam ate. That's the fruit that we should not be eating. That is the Sabbath. He tells us not to do, not to eat of the tree of good and evil, not to eat those foods, but we should have eaten of the tree of life. We should have eaten of his works, his words. That's the whole part of the Sabbath. Well, not the whole, but that's a big part of it. He says, don't lay with your wives. What is he saying then? If we're considered wives, he's saying, don't lay with each other and become blinded. Don't mingle. Don't lay with your wives means don't mingle with the darkness. But we've become mingled. We've laid with the wives and we've forgotten our husband. So we have to really understand what the Bible is really saying, especially now in these times. It's getting close. When he comes, it's going to be chaos for the Gentiles. The whole world is going to be chaos because they're going to lose their power. They're going to lose their culture, their way of life. It's going to fall down like sand through their hand. So I beg you, really understand his word, understand his meanings, and really reach out to what he's been saying throughout time, how he's been building on his words. Even though the words are changed, search for the meaning. The meaning is the key, not what you see by your sight. Don't go by sight, which is the word, but go by trusting in what he is truly trying to say, because he holds the secret things, the secret truth, and he will reveal the secret understanding to you and not seal it up, not keep you blinded if you seek him and understand what he's really trying to say to us. If he's the same as old, wouldn't he have a pattern? Wouldn't he be saying the same thing he's been crying out to us to understand for ages, so that we would wake up? So again, it goes from Genesis, the seed and the husband and the wife, those two verses, to the two nations in the womb. Goes to the light and darkness, goes to, do not mingle with the heathen, do not mingle with the Gentiles, be careful of the friends. The enemy is in your own household. Even right there, the enemy's in your own household. He will divide the household. Mother will go against daughter, husband will go against son, they'll go against each other, because when they are scared of the light that belong to this other nation that has a sword over their head, they're going to be in fear, and they're going to want to go after the remnant because they won't want to hear you preaching. They're going to try to kill you. This is the great martyrdom that is talked about. And those that have the light it'll be like a blinding to them. It'll be so strong, and it'll be like heat over them, because they'll feel like they're burning, and they won't want to hear the truth. So I beseech you, please understand. Understand before it's too late. Understand his true meanings, his true knowledge, what his view of us are, what his view, his expectations, his view of the world. Not through our eyes, not by our sight, but what is his sight? Who are his people? You have all these different denominations that all say that they're all preaching for God, that they will lead you to God, and all these different divisions of church. But he already told you who his people are called. And he tells you not to be a shepherd leading a flock, but rise the flock to being a shepherd, to being disciples, to being Christ, and to preach. Don't hold on to one person and say, God is in them. No, God should be in you. You should be able to walk with him personally. He should be able to work within each one of you individually so that you are the light individually to preach to every person in the corners of the earth, on the edges of the earth. Not to stay in one location listening to a pastor all the time. You should become eventually that light, and you should bring others to him. Yes, if you can't do it through you, then you advise someone else. You bring him to someone else who can, but still, we should be going out to highway and hedges. But instead, the Gentiles are doing more of that than we are. They go out, they preach their version of their lifestyles, of their laws. They are the desolation of abomination because they make the temple an abomination, a desolate. And they have you eat of their works. They have you sleep the way they want you to sleep. They have you work the way they want you to work. They have you to be their light, which is a false light. It's time we wake up. It's time we get ready. So on it with that, and I pray that King of Israel, the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords, that he works in us all, and he works in those that seek him and desire him and wishes to truly marry into him and to be his workmanship, his tool, his light in the world. I pray all these things for each and every one of you. In the name, Yahushua, Yeshua, Jesus, it's all the same meaning. God within us, the light within us, the light that walks with us. In his name, Christ, Jesus Christ, amen.